Hey, what's up, guys? How's everybody doing? Welcome to another episode of Semen Retention Talk, and today I'm going to be getting into living an orgasmic life. So, little update, I'm in the process of moving and moving to a new place next week, so I've kind of been out in the out of town, out of the city, spending some time in nature until I move into my new house. So lots of exciting things in the work for the summer, working on a new internal energy art school. I'll be announcing that soon. Lots of things going on. Oh yeah, Will Blunderfield. He's a great guy. Awesome. Cool. So living an orgasmic life. Semen retention for me is all about living an orgasmic life. What makes a life orgasmic? You know, when you're living with a high charge of sexual energy, then things are just much more enjoyable. Things flow better. You have a lot more sexual energy to create with, whether you're creating more money, creating more pleasure in your life, creating better relationships. You simply have more to work with when you're practicing semen retention, because sexual energy is our creative energy. And as men, we're often conditioned to get in this routine of dispersing our sexual energy. As soon as it builds up, we learn to release our sexual energy through constantly ejaculating. And of course, this dries us up because semen is our most vital essence of our body. It's concentrated life force, so it just doesn't make any sense to be constantly depleting this, because so many men are addicted to ejaculation. They get stuck in this pattern, and then they have no sexual energy to create with. They're at this low level of hormonal, low hormones, low drive, low zest for life, really, because it's what our sex drive is. It's this zest to go out, to create, to make things happen, right? And so when you're constantly stuck in this pattern of downward flow of your sexual energy just dumping out of your body, you have nothing to create with. And this leads to addictions. It leads to basically you're emptying yourself of your life force when you're constantly ejaculating. You start to feel empty inside. You start to lose your energy. You start to feel very depleted. Men in their early 20s now are experiencing sexual exhaustion. They're having porn-induced erectile dysfunction. So all these issues are happening at earlier and earlier ages for men because there's so much more sexual stimulation. Pornography is so available to men. They get addicted to masturbating several times a day. And so you get stuck in this pattern. And when you're in this pattern of depletion, you feel very empty inside. So you start to reach out to the world around you, trying to fill yourself up with drugs, with alcohol, with toxic relationships, things like that. So it's just a downward spiral that so many men in this world are stuck in. And it's my mission through Sexual Kung Fu to help empower men to realize this. So again, it's really about being able to build up this charge of sexual energy and holding that within your body, getting comfortable with having a lot of desire in your body, having a lot of sexual energy, because it is intense, and if you're not grounded, if your body's not open, if your energy channel is not open, then the process is going to be a lot more difficult because you can't handle this extra charge of energy. It's like your container's not big enough. You're trying to overflow a container that just can't handle this energy. So that's why such an important aspect of sexual kung fu is doing the internal work to create the space to hold sexual energy harmoniously, clearing the energy channels of the body, clearing negative emotions, learning to meditate, learning to calm your mind, still your emotions, and create new pathways for the sexual energy to be collected, for it to be held and harnessed within the body. And this is what makes semen retention very, very enjoyable. In fact, it makes it effortless because you're no longer driven to constantly ejaculate your energy. It doesn't become a struggle anymore. It becomes natural and effortless to hold your semen in your body, to express that energy in other ways besides ejaculating it out. So a very important aspect of this is having that daily practice, opening up the body. I use Qigong. I practice Qigong every day. I practice Tai Chi, internal martial arts, to open up the energy channels of the body. I meditate, do breath work. These are the keys to being able to handle an extra charge of sexual energy without feeling like you need to release it, without feeling angry, without feeling frustrated, sexually frustrated, and having blue balls, things like this that a lot of men experience when they're doing semen retention. So learning to tap into your sexual energy is one of the keys to living an orgasmic life. Because again, the sexual energy, it's one of our core primary root forces. And so many people are so disconnected from it in a lot of ways. It's driving their life, but they're completely unconscious of how it's affecting them, the things it's driving them to do. And so when you begin to make this connection conscious, because we have so much conditioning, so much shame around sexuality, from religion, from society. We're just programmed with so much shame around our body, like, oh, don't show this part to anyone. I'm not saying you should go out and be a nudist, but the point I'm trying to make is that we often have a lot of traumas and a lot of shame around our own sexuality, when in reality it's our greatest source of empowerment, our greatest source of energy and fulfillment in life. And so that's why doing this work to create a new experience of sexuality, create a new connection to your sexual energy is so important to, living the life that you truly want to live. So there's some questions being asked. I'm going to get into questions in just a moment here. But so again, it's being able to have an internal practice, I think, is a very essential part of semen retention, because again, you need to develop the skill to consciously work with that sexual energy, to move it throughout your body, keep it circulating. You absolutely have to keep this sexual energy circulating, or else it becomes stagnant. It becomes stuck in your balls, and it's just not pleasant. You're not really getting the most of this energy. So energy practices are crucial, and this will give you the best results in practicing semen retention. This will also create the pathway for you to experience full body orgasms, non-ejaculatory orgasms, because then you can just simply move this arousal up in the body and express it in a different way than ejaculating it out. You can hold it within the body, have these internal orgasms that are very powerful. And so again, and when you have this internal practice where you're connecting with the life force, you're working with the energy channels of the body, keeping them clear, circulating energy throughout your body, you're tuning into your true nature, and you're fulfilling yourself from within. This gets you high. It gets you naturally high. I do Qigong, I do Tai Chi every day because it gets me high naturally. I feel absolutely incredible, elevated, like altered states of mind, clarity and flow. And that's why I practice Qigong every day. It gets me high. And it's a different, again, I was talking about how when you're depleted, when you're constantly discharging your energy, you feel empty inside. So you start to reach out to the world like, well, I need to drink alcohol to feel content, or I need to smoke weed every day to get through life. These are often symptoms that you're missing something within yourself. So you're trying to fulfill it from this outside thing, and overall, this is just not a sustainable lifestyle, because these external substances often deplete you of energy, and you're giving away your power. When you can get high by connecting to your own internal life force, by cultivating your internal energy, then you're free. You don't have to rely on external situations, substances, people, relationships. You have everything you need within you. Now you're approaching life from a space of fulfillment. You're overflowing. You're pouring your energy out into the world around you. And, this is how you live a really juicy, awesome, orgasmic life, right? So with that, I'm going to answer some questions. Okay, I've been practicing microcosmic orbit and testicle breathing, but I feel my throat contracted and tense, like numb throat. Could it be the problem? Could the practices be the problem? It's likely that you just have a blockage in this area of your body. Often when you start moving energy, when you're doing energetic practices, working with the microcosmic orbit, because you're increasing the amount of energy running through your body, you often start to experience certain symptoms if you have a blockage, because it's like you have a channel, right? And there's not usually anything flowing through it. And then you start dumping water through this channel, but there's like little dams and things in it. And it's because there's more flowing through this channel that you become aware of where it's being blocked. So that is very likely what you're experiencing. The throat center is a common area of blockage for a lot of people, so you can work on some practices of clearing that throat center. Okay, do I recommend a penis pump for penis health? No, I do not recommend penis pumps. They can be dangerous because you can overexpand the blood vessels, break them, damage your penis, cause penis nerve damage. Like, it's really not worth the risk versus what you actually get from using penis pumps. So I don't think that it's necessary to do that. How long have I been without ejaculating? Well, I've been practicing semen retention for about 7 years now. I've ejaculated, at certain points during the 7 years, but overall, I'm not the person like obsessing like, oh, I can never ejaculate the rest of my life. It's all about the process of, okay, becoming conscious of of cultivating my energy overall. Some people get overly obsessive about, oh, I can never ejaculate again. It's like, you may ejaculate here and there. It's not a big deal. The overall purpose is you're cultivating your energy, getting better at this practice, right? It's a lifetime. It's a sustainable lifestyle approach of practice versus like overly obsessing, to the point where you can't enjoy sex or anything like that. Porn is the sugar of the internet. It seems to taste sweet, but it fucks you up from the inside. Totally great analogy there. Yeah, sugar is, one of the main drugs in the world. Porn is another main drug in the world that causes all kinds of, horrendous issues. And I've talked about this a lot. How do you know if the practice is working when you're just starting? Thanks. Well, how do you feel throughout your life? It depends what practice you're doing, but in general, the sexual kung fu practices, do you have more energy? Do you feel more calm, more present, more centered? Are you less focused on what's happening out here, and are you more aware of what's in your immediate, your body, your mind, your breath, things like that? Do you feel calmer, more energy, things like that? That's kind of the best thing to look for when you're starting a practice. Is not so much what happens during the practice, but how do you feel the rest of the day? I'm so angry at myself for the destructive habits I indulged in my youth. Well, you can't change the past. There's the past. You can only learn from it. You can only change in the now, right? So there's no reason to beat yourself up about what happened in the past. It's all over. How do the perineum and sacral pump? How to do the perineum and sacral pump properly? Like when to do it and why? This is something some people talk about, is sort of this pump, the sacrum pump and the perineum. But this is kind of physicalizing a process that's quite energetic. When you get really good at moving energy in general, you don't need to use these physical mechanics, like squeezing the perineum, using the sacral pump. They can't help in the beginning. I teach a lot of these methods, like certain physical engagements to help you move energy. But overall, once you develop internal skill, you don't need any physical engagements. You just use your mind to move the energy. And in fact, you have to be careful about squeezing the perineum. If you're constantly squeezing your pelvic floor during sex, you're going to make your penis much more sensitive. You're going to activate the sympathetic nervous system, which makes it much easier for you to ejaculate. So like constantly squeezing your pelvic floor during sex can actually increase premature ejaculation. So I teach a more relaxed approach to sex and working with the sexual energy. If these breathing techniques become too intense for us as we move and cultivate the energy, is there any advice you could give to do with dealing with the energy and not ejaculating it out? So basically, how do you deal with excess energy? There's various ways. Grounding is very important. Stillness meditation, being able to settle everything down. So just sitting calmly, or just observing your breath, letting the breath get slower, quieter, deeper, without forcing the breath, and allow it just to settle down into your lower center, your lower dantian. But grounding in general, I always teach grounding practices in my course because they are extremely important for being able to handle a high charge of energy without, again, feeling like jittery, feeling like you have too much energy, you need to release it. Grounding is how you're able to contain high levels of energy and still stay balanced. It's like, it doesn't matter how much energy you're bringing in. If you can't digest it, if you don't have a container to hold that energy, it's not going to do any good. So that's why grounding is a huge part of this. So that may be something that helps you. Did Qigong in microcosmic orbit every day for a month, and I'm finally multi-orgasmic. Use ejaculation control guide, focused on breathing and relaxing pelvic floor and reverse Kegels. Still want to do the 6-week course. So that's awesome, brother. Yeah, it's glad to hear that that was enough for you. I think you'll get a lot of out of the 6-week course as well. Kind of takes everything deeper, how to really activate, the energy channels of the body, get the sexual energy flowing through all the organs, all the glands, like full body levels of orgasm. That's awesome. Okay, recently been having a lot of issues with porn addiction. What are some ways I can help with the situation? Well, this is something I talk about a lot, but basically it's like, you kind of have to look at why are you seeking porn all the time? Why, porn addiction is a very tough habit to break. I'm just going to be honest with this. It's something I dealt with for years, over a decade. I was addicted to porn. There's a lot of levels to this. All right. The first layer, kind of the more superficial layer most people talk about is the dopamine thing. Like, you look at porn, it releases dopamine, the reward chemical in the brain, and you get hooked on that. And that's, it's part of it, kind of the more physiological reasons, but it's much deeper than that. It's much deeper than just, dopamine being released in the brain. When you're scrolling through social media, you're getting dopamine releases. But why is porn specifically so addictive? Obviously, sex is something we all crave, right? So it's often because we're lacking a certain sense of connection in our life, maybe a connection with ourselves. Maybe you just need to improve your connection with yourself. Learn to have a sexual connection with yourself, right? And also, because of the because of the bonding nature of sexual energy, it literally glues things together. It's like the psychic superglue. When you're constantly jerking off to porn, ejaculating to porn, you're gluing yourself to that pattern. So you become very stuck in this pattern. So, changing your habits, like learning to create new habits in your life instead of watching porn. It's like, okay, instead of watching porn, I'm going to go for a run, go work out. That can help. But ultimately, what I think helps the most is doing this internal energy work, creating these new pathways in the body, clearing out all these old blockages from the past, and learning to redefine your expression of sex, your expression of sexuality. It's not about suppressing your sexuality. That's not the approach I take. It's about creating a new experience of sexuality, one that is much more fulfilling than an ejaculatory orgasm, which just leaves you depleted. When you learn to open up the body, get in touch with your sexual energy, and move it through the body to experience these full body orgasms, opening the heart center as well, feeling this deep unconditional love for yourself and your partner, if you're with a partner, it creates this entirely new experience of sex where you're charging yourself up with sex. You're connecting to yourself, connecting to your partner. It's much more fulfilling than, jerking off to porn, just feeling depressed and, depleted afterwards. So once you've experienced this, you have a new reference point, and you're just going to be much, much less likely to desire to look at porn again after that. It's been my experience with it. Okay, difference between Nofap and semen retention. Good question, because there does kind of seem to be a difference. So Nofap's a movement. That means, no fapping. Fapping is kind of a slang word for masturbation for men. But kind of the issues I see with Nofap is it's not a very holistic approach. It mostly is geared towards just suppressing sexuality. This doesn't work in the long run. You can say, okay, I'm just never going to masturbate again. I'm not going to look at porn anymore. But if you don't address the underlying roots of why you're hooked on ejaculation, why you're hooked on porn, if you don't address the underlying roots, if you're just like, well, I'm just going to put my sexuality in the closet for a while and, they'll be good. Where you're just suppressing your sex drive, eventually it resurfaces. So a lot of guys do Nofap and, they go periods of time without masturbating, without ejaculating. But then they get into a relationship and they're like, okay, I'm in a relationship, so I'm going to have to start having sex again. And then they start acting out these kind of porn conditioned approach to sex, right? They're just kind of this purely physical experience of sex that ends in ejaculation, Whereas semen retention, many people have different definitions of what semen retention is, but my approach to semen retention is a very pleasure inclusive approach. There's no suppression of sexuality. It's fully engaged in if you desire to, but it's about, again, changing your experience of sex, learning to have full body orgasms, non-ejaculatory orgasms, learning to open your heart space, have these deep energetic connections with your partner or with yourself if you have no partner. And so the focus here is not, suppressing sexuality, but it's cultivating sexuality, cultivating that energy, getting completely in touch with it and gaining a harmonious connection with it. So, that kind of the difference between my approach to semen retention and what is often people's Nofap. Okay, how does coffee deplete your gene? So most psychoactive substances do burn up gene. Coffee specifically taxes the kidneys. It burns the adrenal energy, right? Coffee's basically, it's activating your adrenals. It causes them to release cortisol, release these, fight or flight chemicals so that you feel jittery, you feel energized. But what you're doing is pulling from your energetic reserves. You're pulling from energy that you would have later. Now, it's not necessarily an issue if you're moderate with it and if you have a healthy lifestyle. But most people take it too far to where they rely on that cup of coffee to even get going in the morning, which means that your adrenals are usually depleted. So it burns up your gene, burns up your sexual energy to get you into that energized state. So it's kind of like you have a bank account and you're constantly pulling from your savings, right? Eventually, if you're not doing something to put more money back in that savings, so if you're not building up your gene in other ways, then eventually you're going to find yourself depleted. I've experienced this myself. I got really burned out on caffeine in my early 20s. Okay, what do I think about the practice of brahmacharya? So brahmacharya being, kind of that, it's kind of a version of semen retention. Often includes celibacy, things like that. I think there's a lot of great aspects to it, brahmacharya, but kind of the problem people get into it again is suppressing the sex drive. Whereas I believe that, your sexuality is something that should be fully engaged in, but in a harmonious way. So it's how do you implement your sexuality into all other levels of your being? Because if you try to remove this from your life, again, you're suppressing it and eventually it's going to resurface in other ways. Plus, orgasm is a very important part of our experience. It's important for our bodies. Our bodies are made of sex. Our bodies are literally made of orgasms. Our cells are constantly multiplying. They're reproducing. They're literally having sex 24/7. Our bodies are made of sex. So when we resonate with that by engaging in sexual practice ourselves, we nourish that life force. We're able to keep reproducing ourselves. And of course, you use that energy for something else than creating a baby, right? And learning to do that in a way, so for men, learning to have sex without ejaculating, therefore you're not losing any energy through sex, because the problem is not really sex. The problem is ejaculation. But a lot of systems, a lot of spiritual paths, they take sex out of the picture because a lot of them have trouble distinguishing between ejaculation and non-ejaculatory sex, right? So for me, that's the most important aspect, is not suppressing your sexuality, but fully engaging in it in a harmonious way, and learning to have non-ejaculatory orgasms. So you can have these orgasms that charge up your whole bodies and literally expand yourself into universal states of orgasm. All right, so without coffee, I have depression. Well, it's probably kind of your body becomes reliant on it, right? So you can kind of wean yourself off of coffee, of caffeine. You can start drinking green tea instead, like a quality green tea. Personally, I find schizandra to be a really great alternative to coffee. It takes some adaptogenic herbs to build your core energy levels back up. Again, when you've been on coffee for years and you're addicted to caffeine, there can be kind of a withdrawal period where, you will feel depressed if you don't have it. So, kind of part of the process. Do you think you would go to China to learn some other kinds of Qigong practices? If I could get in touch with a good teacher there, but from what I understand, it can be hard to find good teachers. So I don't know. We'll see what the future holds. There's a lot of politics in China too that I'm not interested in engaging in. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, thoughts on sun gazing? I think sun gazing is a great practice. I do it every day, at least every day that I can. So the first 30 minutes of sunrise and the last 30 minutes of sunset, it's safe to look directly at the sun. It's actually very beneficial to you because the sun it's one of the bringers of life on this planet. It's powerful, pure yang essence, right? And so when you sun gaze, you connect with that. It also balances out your hormonal system. It balances out the pineal gland. So there's a lot of benefits to sun gazing. So start with just, a short amount of time, maybe 20, 30 seconds. You can build up a little bit each day that you do sun gazing. It's a really great practice. I like to charge in the sun every day. No, I've never been to India or China. So are the Buddhist monks suppressing their sexuality because they practice sexual abstinence? A lot of them are. And some people, so here's the thing about celibacy. It can be a good thing and it can be a harmful thing. I think celibacy is great if it's something that if it's a natural flow in your life, you just naturally you naturally lose a desire for sex You know, it happens to some people in their older age. It happens to some people as their spiritual path becomes very, you know, because you're channeling the sexual energy up in a different area of expression. But when you force yourself into celibacy, like you're celibate, but you still have like all these sexual desires, you would much rather have a sexually active life. That's when you're kind of asking for trouble. And that's where, you know, a lot of dysfunctions, a lot of blockages and issues can enter. So celibacy should never be forced, in my opinion. Urine therapy. This seems to be coming up more and more. I've heard of urine therapy, but I don't really have any experience with it, so I can't really answer. Okay, what is the difference between working with aroused and unaroused sexual energy? Is one more potent than the other? Good question. So as men, our unaroused sexual energy is more yin, it's more cool. It's much easier to work with unaroused sexual energy. So like the testicle breathing practice, as you learn it, you're working with unaroused energy first. And this is important because aroused sexual energy is more powerful, it's more fiery, but it's much more difficult to control. It's very volatile. You know, you've experienced this if you've ever been aroused. So sort of the reason you distinguish between working with aroused energy versus working with unaroused energy is, again, it's easier to work with unaroused energy in the beginning. And you can safely charge up your brain with unaroused energy and kind of leave it up there, right? So one of the benefits of some sexual kung fu practices is that you learn basically to 24/7 connect with your sexual energy, move it throughout your body, keep it circulating, keep it fresh, charging up your body. Sexual energy is like, it's almost like stem cells in your body. It's this pure gene that you can use it to heal, you can use it to enhance your creative thinking, your brain power, whatever. So an aroused sexual energy, again, it's very fiery, it's very expansive. You don't want to leave this energy in your brain, you know, as your man. I've done this before and like cooked my brain. I had like headaches for days. So you have to be a little more careful with working with aroused sexual energy, but it can be very, very powerful to work with as well, because it's like an atomic bomb as far as energy. So just answering questions. What does it feel to be on a 30-day streak on semen retention? Feels amazing. Feels, you know, confident. Energy levels are high. Very young, masculine feeling of power. You know, magnetism. People are attracted to you. It's funny. Like I'm so used to the benefits of semen retention that, you know, it's just like part of my daily life, right? It's interesting. Okay, what's the downside of semen retention? Here's a good question. The potential dangers, potential problems you can have with semen retention. Semen retention is an increase of energy. It's a significant increase in your sexual energy. Now, this is an inherently good thing in itself, because it just means whatever you're doing in your life, whatever patterns you have, you're just putting more energy into them. So if you're an unbalanced person, you stop ejaculating, start building up this energy, you may find that you're more driven to be, you know, if you're emotionally unstable, you're pouring more fire on those emotions, things like that. This is why in my 6-week course, I start with emotional clearing practices, you know, clearing blockages, clearing negative emotions, changing your habits, changing your lifestyle, and create a safe pathway in the body for the sexual energy to be expressed. Because a lot of guys do semen retention, but they don't have any internal skill. They're not really actually working with the sexual energy. It's just building up in their balls and becomes like a pressure cooker, right? They get blue balls. They have like liver chi stagnation issues, like feeling anger, feeling frustrated all the time, feeling stuck in their life. It's not very enjoyable to do this in this context. So in my opinion, it's crucial to have some sort of internal practice connecting with your energy, keeping the sexual energy circulating if you're going to do semen retention. Okay, what are your thoughts on ejaculation? Does this weaken your vitality as a man? Does this lower testosterone? Any info is appreciated. So, you know, this is kind of a word a lot of people throw around ejaculation. I'm not sure what exactly you mean by ejaculation. Often this is associated with techniques such as the $1 million point, where you press on the perineum to block the ejaculation valve. So you're kind of physically holding the semen within the body, that type of orgasm. this will still cause a loss in sexual energy, not as much as a full-on ejaculation, but you're still losing energy from it. And the same thing, like the orgasms where you're squeezing your pelvic floor at the point of ejaculation to hold in the semen, same thing, you still lose energy, but not as much. So, if that's the sort of ejaculation you're talking about, it doesn't weaken your vitality as much as a full-on ejaculation, but I prefer the more internal methods of just drawing the sexual energy up through the body with your mind to experience full body orgasms, because you don't lose vitality with those. While semen retention practice, transmitting sexual energy up my head, feels heavy, not able to sleep. Any solution? So this is common. Too much energy in the head, you can't sleep. This happened to me. Don't bring it up to your head, or just work it in the orbit. Only if your orbit's fully open, right? So if you have blockages in your throat, then you may have trouble getting the energy back down your body. So just bring it up into the Dantian center. Bring it up into the lower Dantian. In my 6-week course, I teach these practices of bringing the sexual energy to the lower Dantian, all the organs, the glands in the body, because for some people it's too stimulating to bring the sexual energy up into the head. So just don't bring it up to the head. Do you ever use the inner smile from Michael Wynn, Montauk Chia? If so, what benefits have you seen? Yeah, this is one of the foundations of my practice. But this is a very common practice in a lot of traditions. The inner smile is basically connecting with the heart space, connecting to unconditional love. In Buddhism, it's like kindness and love, things like that. So this is it's pretty universal practice. This is basically, again, just tuning into the space of your heart and just having this space of acceptance of what is. And you bring this throughout your body. Like, I accept my body. I love my lungs. We often don't bring our awareness within our body. We often don't give our internal organs much attention and love. So it's no wonder when they start to act up on us. So it's a very powerful practice. You learn to smile to yourself. You learn to smile to situations in life, challenging situations. You're not trying to change them. You're not trying to forget about them. It's just accepting what is and understanding it's all part of your own process, and that we're all connected in some way. So yes, I think the healing smile is a great practice, and I teach a version of it in my 6-week course. The next 6-week course is in July. It is going to be in July, so I'll be announcing that soon for sure. No, I don't use a blow dryer to style my hair. Here's a good practice. I feel that spiritual practices unearth a shadow part of my psyche. How would one deal with the demon part inside? So this is a good question. As you start doing spiritual work, as you start awakening, the light in your life increases, right? And the stronger the light, the darker the shadow. So this is a very normal part of kind of the process of spiritual evolution, is you start to become aware the sort of unintegrated patterns of yourself. And this ties in very well with what I was talking about, the inner smile. Being able to have compassion for yourself, being able to have compassion for the more dark aspects of yourself, your shadow aspects, just embracing all parts of the experience as they are, because we're in a world of polarity. We can't exist in this physical realm without polarity. So it's always going to be there as long as we're having a physical experience. So, there's a lot of practices of implementing these shadow aspects. But, you kind of have to make friends with these dark aspects of yourself. Don't try to fight them. The more you try to fight something, the stronger it's going to fight back. So it's like, how do you love and appreciate and understand that maybe these aspects have some purpose for you, or at least they had at some point in time. So okay, what advice do you have for 23-year-old male doing long-term soul cultivation, retaining semen, no sexual fantasy or thoughts, channeling the energy into work and goals, how to handle all the hormonal urges? You find the energy too much in 3 weeks. Well, you're young, you have a lot of sexual energy to deal with, so don't be too hard on yourself. But it's important that you learn to work with your internal energy. As I was talking about, meditate, open up the energy channels of the body, work with the microcosmic orbit. That's how you truly transmute the energy. Because if you're getting overwhelmed with like horniness and things like that, it means you're not truly transmitting the energy. It's still strongly trying to be expressed in this genital region, or maybe it just means you want a partner to express that sexual energy in a certain way with, right? So for me, the key has been internal practice, learning to redirect the energy upwards through qigong, through meditation, through yogic practices. Okay, do I use commercial soap, shampoo, conditioner? Do I worry about chemicals leaching into the body and affecting testosterone? I do not use toxic products. I do not put anything toxic in my body. I'm very, very conscious of what I eat, what I drink, what I put on my skin, because the skin is the largest organ of the body. Anything you put on your skin, you might as well be eating. You look at pretty much every commercial product, in the market, whatever, and they all have like this long list of chemicals you can't pronounce, and you're absorbing this shit in your body. So it's important to be very conscious of what you put on your skin, what you eat, what you drink, because it affects you. So I do live a non-toxic lifestyle, and I highly encourage you to do the same if you're interested in your health and well-being. All right, guys, going to answer just a couple more questions, then jump off here. I always feel tired and depleted after ejaculation. What can I do and eat? Well, you should probably go longer periods of time without ejaculating. Eating goji berries, taking zinc, maca root, kidney building foods are great for replenishing that gene after an ejaculation. Okay, is there a point in lovemaking after a period of non-ejaculation where you reach a point that you do ejaculate? So basically, if you're having a long session of sex, non-ejaculatory, should you ejaculate at the end? There's not necessarily a point, Sometimes it can be like an energy exchange, like if your partner needs some healing, maybe that direct physical gene could help them. But overall, there's no real point in ejaculating, at least not frequently, when you're having sex. So it's kind of up to your own discernment. I will say, though, that when you learn the sexual kung fu practices to draw the energy out of the sexual organs through the rest of the body, you do that for a long period of time during sex. If you do ejaculate after that, you lose significantly less energy. What is the proper order of doing Taoist meditations? Inner smile, 6 healing sounds, microcosmic orbit. I mean, it depends what system you're studying when. There's lots of systems, but from my experience, the most important thing is developing the Dantian, being able to still the mind and develop the Dantian, being able to sink your energy down into the Dantian. If you don't build a Dantian, then you don't really have this energetic center. You don't have a supply of a reservoir of energy and gene to really move through your body, basically. And that's what gives you the most tangible, powerful results, is having that Dantian first built in place, which is something I'm incorporating into my teachings now because it's extremely important. Inner smile is a good foundation. 6 healing sounds are great to start with because that's kind of clearing the negative energy out. Microcosmic orbit is powerful as well, but the more you build your Dantian before beginning the microcosmic orbit, the better results you will get. Mention some forms of microcosmic orbit. There's many different practices of working with it. I have several on my YouTube channel, so you can check those out. Is it okay to take maca powder every day? It depends. Maca can be very stimulating. It can build a lot of heat. I have to be careful with maca. Sometimes it makes me overheat, meaning at night my heart's pounding, I'm not able to sleep. So if you feel you need the extra energy, kind of that extra yang fire, then it's great to take. But if you're feeling overly heated, overly stimulated, then I would not take maca at that time. Yeah, guys, I'm live on Instagram and YouTube, so I'm doing my best to get to all the questions, but there is a lot and my time is limited. Daniel Reed, I'm familiar with his work. No, I don't believe that one ejaculation takes 100 days to recover. For some people it may, but it very much depends. But there's kind of a common practice. If you're studying internal alchemy, where they recommend going 100 days without ejaculating to really build up the genes so that you really have something to transform with. Tips for muscle building in a natural way: do strength training. Work your muscles to the point of exhaustion, and eat a lot of food. Recover. Take rest time as well. Get a lot of protein. I have seen Qigong books say breathing in brings the energy down, breathing out brings it up the spine. Your microcosmic orbit says the opposite. I've seen many, many, many different ways, and it actually really doesn't matter what pattern you're breathing in. Breath and energy are not necessarily connected. Like, I'm often running my microcosmic orbit without any connection to the breath, because the true Neigong, the true internal skill, is you're just guiding the energy with your mind. What the breath's doing is not important. So the breath's kind of like a training wheel in the beginning, where it kind of helps anchor your mind and focus and guide energy in a certain way. But honestly, once you develop these practices, it doesn't matter what synchronization the breath is. You can breathe up the spine, you can exhale up the spine. It doesn't matter. You'll see a lot of teachers say a lot of different things. So you have to experiment with yourself. You can't just read things and say, like, oh, that's the way it is. This guy said it. Because here's the tendency people have: like, you're completely open. You're reading a new subject. You read one book on the subject, and that kind of becomes your standard. Like, oh, this book said this, but this other book said this because I read this book first. What this book said is wrong. That it's kind of the tendency we have as humans. So I encourage you to experiment, try different techniques. Don't just take someone's word for it. Feel it in your body. That's how my practice has evolved. Is I only teach what I've personally experienced and what's personally worked for me. So penis enlargement. I don't know what that is. So penis enlargement, you can increase your size. Stretching, jelqing is good, but you have to be careful. You have to not overdo it. You can damage your penis. You have to take days off. Be careful about supplements. A lot of people, sell supplements trying to sell you on, oh, it's going to grow your penis. Most of them don't work. So, but you can naturally increase your penis size through exercises. Balls exposure to the sun. I try to get full body sun every day. I feel a lot more energized. I feel a lot more juicy. My sexual energy is higher when I do get sun exposure on my skin, especially my genitals. So it's very beneficial. All right, guys, thanks for joining. I got to jump off. All right, I'm gonna ask this one last question. How integrative is quitting coffee with cultivating energy? So here was my experience. I was still on caffeine when I was beginning my qigong practice. I was drinking yerba mate, which is, I would say, it's a lot better for you than coffee, but still, it's caffeine. It's overstimulating. So, qigong internal energy practices, they make you much more sensitive. The things you put in your body are going to affect you a lot more. That's what I noticed. And I found as I was practicing qigong, I would drink, my yerba mate, and it made me a lot more jittery. It just didn't really make me feel good anymore. So I naturally lost my desire to have it. So you become more sensitive, and you'll find a lot of the things, kind of the addictive habits you have, naturally start to fade away. Things like porn as well. That's how it was for me. I didn't try to cold turkey quit porn, quit smoking weed. It was because my internal energy practice was developing. I felt so great. I got so high from it that these other things started to pull me down. So that's it. Marijuana, same thing. Okay, so people ask this a lot. All right, this is the last thing, and I got to jump off. But marijuana, it has its benefits and it has its cons as well. Smoking weed every day is not a good idea. Unless you have some chronic health issue that you're using it medicinally for. Psychoactive substances, they burn up your gene to get into these high states, right? Your gene is your physical essence. It's what's creating your body. You only have a certain amount of it, right? But you can increase it. But so I used to smoke weed every day. And after I started practicing qigong, I naturally stopped smoking weed. And I realized how unenergized, how unmotivated, how lazy, and scattered it was. It also definitely lowered my testosterone levels, So the benefits of whether it's weed, psychedelics, whatever, is that they kind of give you an expanded view on things. They can kind of really shift your perspective. You can get a lot of insight from them. The problem is that so many people become addicted to them. They use them as a crutch. It's like, oh, I can't be spiritual unless I'm smoking weed. It's kind of a trap a lot of people fall into. So you're giving your power away to something else, and it's taking some of your energy to give you that state. So, it's ultimately it's a very you're only going to get so far with it, basically, right? So me personally, I love internal practices. I love qigong. I love meditation because I get high. I get these expanded states of mind, expanded mindset, without any of the negative side effects. And I'm not giving my power away to a substance. So whatever works for you, that's fine. But this has been my experience with it. And with this, I am going to jump off. All right, thank you guys. Thanks for joining. I will be back on here same time next week.